Greetings, nerds and a nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me as always is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Doing all right.
That's good. That's good. Having a good week?
Sure. Sure. I don't know what's the echo with. Like, I don't know why I keep just repeating the same last word. Word.
Word. Are you trying to convince yourself?
Well, I mean, you always try to make us do pre-show talk, and then we start, and I'm looking at my timer, and I'm like, all right, eventually we have to start recording. Well, let's go.
Yeah.
And you always cut it. It just, you magically want to start the show the moment you drop something like, I don't know, I have a different opinion than you, Sarah, so this will be interesting. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? What? Am I wrong?
No.
Granted, we're talking about TV and film, so there is no right and wrong answers.
Exactly. No, there's no right or wrong. Yeah, I was just, whenever we were doing our pre-talk, you were just sharing your views of television this week, and I just said I had a different opinion on it, and so this should be a fun recording tonight.
Yeah, and it's all anchored on the same show, which is surprising to me because I've really liked Watchmen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not nerding out about it as much as other people, i.e. Will, is, who keeps sending me links to all of these rabbit holes of information.
Yeah.
That I don't go down, not because I don't want to. I feel like I'm almost not in, like, if this show was released next year,
Mm-hmm.
I would probably be nerding out about it, watching every episode on repeat and everything, and I would be the one sending you links. Unfortunately, I'm just not. That's not the way my life is right now.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well,
give me some time.
Yeah. Well, I seen you those things to help you get your mind off of your move and figuring out how to sort your life out as you are literally living out of boxes still, and suitcases.
Literally, and it's driving me crazy. But thank God Panda was in this episode of The Watchmen.
Yes, as soon as I saw the panda, I was like, the panda is back. Yes, all is right in the world, because I've been missing Panda.
He should appear in every single episode. That's all I'm saying.
Totally. He should appear. They got to figure out a way. Maybe now, since they'll be back in the police station much, and all the things that happened this episode, they'll figure out a way to work him in.
I mean, how are they going to be costume of the year for 2020 Halloween if you don't inundate us with how impressive and hilarious and ridiculous that outfit is?
Yeah, it is. It's, and I guess it's another commentary about this alternate universe that the Watchmen is set in, that the absurdity of the superhero who wears a panda outfit who's a cop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh man. So we are obviously talking about Watchmen season 1, and this is all through Wade's perspective, and we learn a lot more about him and his character, and we hear about the squid that ends up in New York City due to extra dimensional travel, or I don't know what the kids call it these days. What's going on?
Yeah, so it picks up. Wade we do get his backstory. Yes, he's a Jehovah's Witness, and it's 1985, Hoboken, New Jersey, and they're on a mission trip at this carnival, which think I have to think back a little bit to Stranger Things with the nostalgia trip, because it did remind me a little bit of that, and those little carnivals back in the 80s and whatnot. But yeah, so he's in the carnival. He is doing a mission trip, and then he gets pulled away, and he's in a fun house with a young woman, and of course he's a teenage boy, and those hormones, Spider-Verse hormones, start surging, and next thing you know, he's standing there naked and and she fakes him out and runs out, and then all hell breaks loose, which is the squid, the infamous squid that from the comic book was the ending where Ozymandias, in order to stop a nuclear war between the Soviet Union and the United States, dropped it in the middle of New York to bring everybody together, which was like alluded to. It's been talked about all the time, but this was like the true like linkage to the graphic novel, and we actually see the grotesque squid in Manhattan, and of course we had all the psychic trauma that came with it as well. So, which again that sets us off into Wade's journey for how he becomes Looking Gas.
Yeah. It's well, I don't even know if we figured that out. I don't know if we figured out how he ended up from there to being married, trying to go through, have that relationship, which we meet the ex-wife, and there's obviously a lot of history there, which I'm very intrigued by understanding that relationship more. And we don't really understand how he ended up in Oklahoma and
he was originally from Tulsa. So he went back home. Remember at the very beginning when they're the
So he goes back home, but they didn't tell you why he joined the force, did they?
No, I don't think they did.
I mean, there is one line that alludes to the fact that you ended up, no wonder why you ended up being putting on that mask to wrap your entire head because of all the paranoia that exists. And that's one thing and don't get me wrong, during the pre-show, that should have never happened. We were talking, and I alluded that I didn't really care for this episode. There are a lot of parts that I really liked. The longer it went on, the more I was like, I don't know if I like where this is going. I'm just, why? Really? And I liked it again by then, but the whole and I don't want to say it's a detour, but the whole thing with the cavalry and he's a pretty boy. What is his name? The governor?
Senator Keene.
Yeah, the senator. Like him now being in part of the cavalry. I don't like. To me, there was something about that where I don't buy it. And yeah.
Yeah. See, actually, it made sense to me that he was a part of the 7th Cavalry, and basically using them to, and of course the whole we get to sort of the whole backstory for the extra dimensional anxiety that everyone has, and how Veidt had basically manipulated the situation and used the squid as a way to save the day and save the world, but at the same time also put things in motion with the video to set the path for Robert Redford to basically become president, because he records that video in '85 to be shown to him, I guess 7 years later, when he is elected, and basically lays out the reasoning why he did what he did. So I think from that standpoint, Keene, and also looking back to the earlier episodes where Crawford had the Klan costume in his closet, and he, of course, Keene's Crawford's wife working for Keene's campaigns. There was that linkage there. So I wasn't too thrown off by the fact that he was tied in with the 7th Cavalry.
Well, don't get me wrong. I didn't say that I was thrown off by it. I said that I didn't buy it. And maybe it's because I guess I'm figuring out that I watch Watchmen, but I don't really watch it. I don't know. I'm just making this up. That happens in it. What else happens in this episode?
Well, I mean, the whole the key thing was thinking about present day events with the squid pro quo, and I couldn't help but laugh out loud when I heard that when I heard that line, because every day you get bombarded with the whole quid pro quo with all the stuff going on in Washington, and so that what I really liked about this episode was the fact that the trauma that Wade had from the incident in 1985, and how it caused him to not be able to form lasting relationships with people. Obviously, his romantic relationships were definitely thrown askew from what happened to him in the funhouse, and then with his ex-wife. Like you said, I mean, it would be great to get some more backstory there as far as why they didn't work, and the trust issues, how he had trust issues, and how that betrayal of trust, and then he in turn, when Agent Blake, wired his cactus, and found out that he was communicating to his wife about the drugs that Angela had taken off of Will Reeves.
That just sounded so wrong. Like, well, the way you said that about the cactus, like, and then Blake wired his cactus, and I'm like, the heck did she do to him? I don't remember that part.
Yeah.
But geez, that was that in the Looking Glass? I don't know. Did he have his mask?
No. He had so on his desk. He had a little cactus plant on his desk.
No. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying the way you said it sounded really wrong. Like my mind went completely someplace else.
Yeah. Well, it was pretty wrong. But anywho, she did it, and it basically, Wade basically betrays Angela's trust, just like all those things years ago when he was trusting and opened up to someone, and then, even though it was trying to get it was a booty call, but he got hurt from it, and so it was sort of the same thing happened to him when he, whenever the 7th Cavalry was trying to throw her off the trail, or they end up killing her family. Wade makes the decision to betray Angela, and after, given that he was traumatized from people being dishonest with him, now he's doing it himself.
But you could also interpret that he's also doing that because he wants to protect her in a way too.
Yeah, I mean, it is to protect her, but it's just, his whole world has just basically been turned upside down, because all this time everything is, thinking through one of the through lines in this series has been superheroes are born out of their trauma, and so, this episode is where we see Wade's trauma, that what pushed him into becoming Looking Glass. And so him making, and basically his whole world being turned upside down, because he was thinking that the squid was extra dimensional, when it actually turns out it was just created here on Earth, and it was just a big cover story. And it's sort of like taking the red pill or the blue pill. He took the pill, and now he's like, oh, I'm woke and see what's really going on.
Is that true? Is that really what this show is about, or one of the main things about heroes being born out of trauma? Because arguably, this show made it a point where the main characters and the quote-unquote heroes are cops who have to wear masks due to that tragic event X amount of years ago. And so they're masked cops. Now, from for the viewers, they are perceived as heroes because we're used to heroes wearing masks. But the actual heroes, or the comic book characters who we're used to finding as the heroes, they're alluded to. We may have even seen some of them on the moon, if you know what I'm saying. But they also are, they're almost at a distance. They're almost like overseen all of these other antics played out by. So I think in a way, really, I would just revise that statement and say that the cops or protectors are born out of trauma, not necessarily the heroes or the people who we would say is heroes in this genre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fair statement. But I mean, I guess in this Watchmen world, I mean, I guess superheroes, because of the Keene Act, are outlawed. So yeah, but the cops are, yeah, like you said, I mean, they are the perceived heroes. And I mean, with each character we have encountered, I mean, Angela, Looking Gas, even Agent Blake with her origin story, with, you know, her being conceived out of rape. I mean, there is some catalyst event that happened that they feel they go in this direction, in this case law enforcement.
Right. And I like more looking at the characters on this show who have those powers, who are larger than life, and the theme of comparing them to gods, mm-hmm. almost to the point of almost as if, like, yeah, not all gods are good, you know, that right. we have a devil, and some gods are bad and some are good and some manipulate but they have so much power, mm-hmm. that depending on what side of the bed they wake up in the morning, they could either wreak havoc or save everyone. So there is something about that, and even though I skipped most of the video that Wade ends up finding about how this person planted the squid and everything, I don't know. Who is his name? What is that character's name? Well, this is driving me crazy.
Jeremy Irons' character?
Yeah.
Vate. Andrew Vate. Osmondias. Yeah.
Vate. Yeah. Okay, so even though I fast forward through most of Vate's video, I did find it very interesting how he is like that's just classic villainy to say, hey guys, look what I did. I'm obviously the hero. You know what it reminded me of, now that I think about it? Far From Home. Mm. Yeah, because it's a very much like the true ploy, the true game or the scheme is to make everyone else believe that you're the hero when really you're the villain.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy that you pulled there. It does have that very that vibe, and I mean, and essentially that's what he did. I mean, because basically, getting to your theme about gods being good or could be good or bad. I mean, the god in this particular world was Dr. Manhattan, and he just became indifferent, and so Vate basically plugged in that void and basically acted like God and dropping the squid on New York to save the world.
I always think about Superman whenever we talk about Dr. Manhattan on this show, on this series specifically, because you're right. He became indifferent and then he left and now he's on Mars, and there's still this sense though that he's watching over what happens on Earth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And anytime I think about that, I always think of Martha telling Clark, you don't have to save them. You don't owe them anything, Clark. I wonder if Martha's on that moon with Manhattan.
She might be.
Maybe the Agent Blake said that. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe that's the punchline of her joke.
I think that might be.
Yeah, I am looking really forward to this week's episode of Watchmen, though, because that this idea that at the end of it, Angela drinks her grandfather's memories, mm-hmm. and we're gonna go on this psychological memory exploration in the next episode. That is fascinating.
It is. It is. It was his whole ploy to be, whenever they were having their interactions to try to she learned about her more about her family, and then through going to the Redfordation centers and the History Museum about the Tulsa Massacre, and then basically he set the trap and set the plan in motion for her to learn about him, and what better way is through the nostalgia and just the trip that it's going to go on. I'm definitely looking forward to Sunday's episode, and also seeing what happens with Wade, because he had his whole world turned upside down with learning that the extra dimensional psychosis was just maybe all manufactured and manipulated. And then of course he bought the new box and he threw it in the trash, but then he got it back out, and of course the 7th Cavalry shows up, and we have our little cliffhanger till this week, and I'm hoping Wade survives because I really like the character.
Oh, absolutely. Wade needs to survive. Because that, especially due to the unresolved betrayal between him and Angela, mm-hmm. I think that if he doesn't survive at least one more episode, then I'm going to look back and find that maybe predominantly this episode was a waste. Like, what you've just spent an entire episode featuring this character,
right,
to tell the story, and then you wipe him off the map, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
We spent an entire episode with Blake, and she's still like haunting the police force and this town, and trying to figure out what's really happening. And I don't know why. Maybe it's some form of redemption for her, but I agree that ending. There was something very creepy about that ending.
Yeah.
And it reminded me about a lot of how sometimes Mr. Robot will steer their narrative in this, and it I don't know. I kept thinking about that.
Yeah. It did have that kind of clearly cliffhanger ending, and just leaves you on the edge of your seat, and just like, it could go so many different ways. It could definitely go Wade's like in his house and waiting for them to come in, and he just takes them all out, or it could be with the White Knight for Wade, as it happened to Angela's family. So we'll see. But you're right. I agree with you. It would be a shame, given that the series only has like 9 episodes, if they like spin a whole one and have this grand revelation and take one of the main players off the stage without that resolution, I'll be very disappointed.
So speaking about Mr. Robot,
yeah.
I finally watched an episode of the final season.
You revisited. Yeah, I have been keeping up with it. I mean, there were a couple episodes where I was just like, I'm not sure about this, but this week's was definitely not one of them.
Really?
Yeah. It had a lot. I guess one of the things you've talked about with me is that the first season, and I guess this episode has so many callbacks to the first season and the pilot, and it, even though it's the last season, it really closed several arcs, but also I'm still conflicted about what we learned about Elliot and why he had what was the
right.
cause of his dissociative disorder.
Thank God.
Yeah.
For a moment there, I thought you were going to like really like it and really like what they did, and I'm like, really? Will we have to talk?
No. I'm still conflicted as far as one. Why did Sam make that particular choice of trauma to be what was this grand secret that he was hiding? Two, because, and the reason why I say that is that, like, I mean, it was telegraphed where it was going when I was watching the scene. I was just like, please don't let it be that. Please don't let it be that. And then it was that. And then I was like, shit. So, and from just a technical performance standpoint, I mean, it was just riveting. I mean, it was, Rami just was amazing in that scene. And I mean, the whole episode being broken up like a play and, having 5 acts, I thought was narratively and structurally, it was very fascinating to see that being done on television. So from a technical standpoint, I liked it, but as far as the reveal that his father had molested him, I was just like, that just completely turns this whole world upside down. And really thinking as far as, what, I mean, on the one hand, it makes sense for like why, his first hack, one of the first hacks we see him do is to hack with the child pornographer in the first season. But then there's other parts of it where I'm just like, what? How does this all fit together?
So maybe if over the weekend I just at random briefly watched on Netflix American Son, which is based off of a play. So the way that they structured the entire movie is 1 room, 2 characters, 3 characters max, and it's all dialogue, it's all conversations, and it's very similar. So maybe if I hadn't watched that, I would sit down and watch this episode in that style and be like, oh my god, this is revolutionary, this is so cool, it's so different. But I already had that in my head, so I was already like, I've seen this really recently.
Yeah.
And I love Vera. I had first season when Vera shows up and what he does, I always thought that relationship was really cool.
Yeah.
The longer this episode went on, the longer I was like, okay, take it down a notch. Like there's so much sexual tension in that whole environment.
Yep.
Where it, like it's just it's
good.
Weird.
Yeah, well, okay, good. I'm glad I wasn't the only one thinking that too, because I felt the same way.
I don't understand why they needed to do that. There was and if you watch when he first shows up on the first season, compare that episode, that performance, that character to what we got in this episode, night and day.
Yeah.
Like it does not make sense. And so I was like, oh, okay. And it was so freaking telegraphed that the longer they played that, which killed me, because I'm like, you could have chopped off 2-3 minutes maybe from that entire scene. We didn't need it. You were spelling it out for us. And to the point where by the time Elliot has the breakdown because he's figured it out, I didn't care. I was like, yeah, I figured it out 3 minutes ago. So wake up. It kills me. I am not on the fence. I don't like it. I think it's a bad choice because it undermines all of season 1 for me. What I thought was so beautiful about season 1 is, and what is the only relatable thing about Elliot Alderson as I knew him, is that he was a kid who idolized his father.
Yeah.
Who, when his father was taken away from him, he became more isolated. And so he was put on this path of depression. He was put on this path of drugs, and then really a dissociative disorder. And then maybe this event happened and that triggered the dissociative disorder. But because he no longer had his father, he reimagined his father as his best friend or as another part of him, as another identity. And there was something so cool about that.
Yeah.
Then to have this happen, I'm just like, I get it. We all know, we all hear the stories. We all understand that trauma like that leads to those disorders. Right. But it felt very much like a my dad always refers to these kind of things as after school special, like here's a PSA,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I immediately went to the same thing that you did. I'm like, well, the first episode of the entire show, he takes down someone who has child pornography. First episode of this season, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it obviously makes sense. Yeah, there's 2 seasons in between, no references.
Yeah, none. Yeah, exactly. Other than a very protective, like, Krista was dating the one individual. He did do, he had a very protective nature, which I guess was the persona, Mr. Robot, that he had developed, and so he was doing that externally for like Krista, but I just felt Sam took a creatively, and it just storytelling was, it just felt cheap.
Yes. Yep. Cheap, unearned. It didn't hit me the way it was supposed to hit me.
Yeah.
And see, that's another thing about it. Something like that, you're so invested in a show, you're so invested in character, you really want to know the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been fed so many different versions of that day. We've been fed so many different versions of why Elliot is the way he is, that by this point, I'll be honest, I don't need to know why Mr. Robot is there. I never needed to know. I got over that at the end of the first season.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why now? Why is it so critical? And because I'm not on the edge of my seat. I'm just like, okay. I'm more taking the fan girl approach, where it's like, you're ruining my story, Sam Esmail.
Well, you're right. I mean, it did ruin. For me, it just undercut everything. But I guess now moving forward, I'm like, okay, so will we see Mr. Robot, or will we? There's always been this fan theory out there that there's a third personality. So will we see a new person? Will that new personality emerge, or was the secret the third thing that was the third leg that has always been there, and now it's been revealed, and we'll just go back to him trying to undo 5'9", when taking that White Rose.
And thank you for bringing that up, because there's an episode, one of the last ones I watched this season before I skipped 3, where they end it with, I think it's Elliot's mom and the younger version of Elliot, and she tells him the third one is coming, or they allude to it.
Right.
And I was watching this episode, and I'm like, you know what? Because initially it's not telegraphed where this is headed, and then the longer it goes, then it does. But so I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I wonder if the key is going to be in relation to the reveal of the third identity.
Right.
And there we go. We do have a running theory. We have a mystery. We know it's been hinted at. Like, when are they going to follow through with that? Because that's really what the viewers want to know, not where Mr. Robot comes from.
Right.
And now that we know, I'm like, I loses all credibility.
Yeah, and so when Mr. Robot, the persona, does come out again, I won't be able to relate to that character the same anymore.
No.
And I'll keep an open mind. Maybe it will all work out, and we'll look back at this bottle episode as the episode that needed to happen. But right now, as a viewer, as someone who's been on this journey, I'm feeling very pissed off and conflicted, because on the one hand, it was a very bold way to go in some regards, but on the other hand, I feel like, my bigger feeling is that it was, like I said earlier, it was just a cheap way of storytelling, and I felt that it completely undermines what all we've been to up at this point. And so I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, you better bring it the rest of the way if you want to, have a satisfactory resolution for the fangirl who's been on this journey the last 4 years.
And see, I'm one step further. I'm at the point where I'm like, I just want to see the ending and be done. You know, I've invested time in it. I've already skipped 3 episodes this season. I'm obviously like kind of off the train at this point, but I'm going to watch the series finale for sure. Yeah. Am I interested to know where everything was going to? Yeah, I am. I just also, I really wish they were able to recapture that magic of season 1. Like, and that's what I wanted this season. I wanted to go back to the basics and recapture that magic. And I see hints at it. And then I just feel like Sam Esmail is kind of he's taken this approach where it's so self-indulgent. That's what I'm trying to say. It's so self-indulgent, and between the story points and just the overall, let me make every episode this season conceptually different. Like, that didn't work for Titans.
Yeah. Well, see, it's funny because this episode up until that point, I was getting season 1 vibes. I mean, because as you were talking about Vera, I was really engaged in their back and forth between Elliot and Vera, and and his whole thing. I want to conquer the city, and you're going to help me, and Elliot pointing out that you didn't get me before. And there was so much subtext and so much sexual tension between them, and at least with Vera towards Elliot, and so yeah, I did get those first season vibes, and it just, whenever they went back to the the Krista's therapy room and that whole act, I guess it was Act 4, unraveled and came about. I saw where it was going, and I was just like, I hope not. I was really hoping maybe the third personality will show up, but then of course we got that he was molested, and then I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. I'm glad you told me, Sarah. You got to watch the episode. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And I'm not saying it was a waste of an hour. I can't believe Will told me to get back on the train or anything. Because this is critical for me to, if I'm a fan of the show, this is a critical episode. Hate it or love it. I mean, it is significant. And I think it is interesting that I have not seen a lot of debate online. Granted, I'm online, so we lost power. We lost internet on like Monday or Tuesday night for 2.5 hours. It was as if I had lost all power and I had no idea what to do with myself, Will. But that's besides the point. Yeah, I'm, Mr. Robot, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have been wondering, well, are they still watching it? Why aren't they covering it? Yeah. Well, we just covered it, okay?
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, the episodes, I've been watching it, and there was, Tyrell was murdered and other things happened, but I felt this episode, but when I watched it Sunday night, I was like, we got to talk about this one, because prior to this episode, it's been happening, but I haven't felt so moved that I was like, oh, Sarah, we got to talk about this one. But this episode, it was obviously a milepost in the series that we definitely needed to talk about.
So this week, I don't know what it is with me and my TV watching. I've noticed I haven't really been, oh my God, I need to get on the podcast and talk to Will about these episodes. The one show outside of The Crown, of course, that I watched where I thought, you know what, I like this, was surprisingly Batwoman.
I agree.
I've been dragging the ship that is Sophie and Kate all season, and I watched this episode all about Sophie. And I really liked it.
Yeah.
I understood it. There's a bitterness to it. There's a bittersweetness to it that I liked. Pennyworth having her daughter. We all knew what would happen by the end of it. Saw that coming. But I like that I like how they're incorporating these nods to Batman characters and legacy.
Yeah.
The way they're incorporating them, it doesn't stand out. It feels natural.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. They are definitely finding their footing. We went, I guess, the first 4 episodes, the first 3 in particular, it was, Kate trying to establish her identity outside of Batman, and there was a lot of Batman. Some people felt maybe Batman bashing, or her, her not feeling comfortable in the role. And I mentioned a few weeks ago, I'm starting to grow in the series and feeling Ruby. I feel like I'm growing with Ruby in her, evolution as Kate. I'm feeling the same way as a viewer, and the show is starting to. One of the things we talked about early on was, is it going to break the Arrowverse mold and sort of branch out and do have its own identity? And I think this episode had that. And you're right. I mean, the whole Sophie Kate dynamic, how they worked as a couple. We were introduced to them as a couple. Kate's choice to, when she was at the academy, and to go for it and be open and out, and Sophie, we got, what I really liked about it, we really got Sophie's perspective as far as why she made the decisions that she did, and how Kate's father had a role in that.
Right.
And that was the character development that had been lacking with Sophie up to this point in the season. So now I'm starting to feel her as a more 3-dimensional character, instead of being the damsel in distress.
Yeah, that's a great point. And probably what I wanted to say is that early on, she felt like that's how her character would be, where she literally in the pilot was the damsel in distress. She gets kidnapped, and Kate comes in and saves her, and that's the only reason why she's returned. But now, which actually leads me to another point. Now that Kate, like, literally Sophie married someone else, and it is no longer available, and that relationship is over. So in a way, to get over that connection, I think that's also why Kate became Batwoman. I mean, to fill that void, and which is also making her feel so isolated from everything and everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked it. I was engaged predominantly throughout the entire episode. And I think that not only are they finding their footing with the world, but they're expanding it. And we're going to say this until the writers listen to us. When you keep Alice on the DL, this show is stronger. And please do not tell me she's going to be in this entire first season, because I'm very curious about how this show is going to navigate the stop start that is going to be Crisis, like how they're going to lead itself into Crisis, and what's going to happen after Crisis, and the ramifications for Batwoman. I am also very interested in seeing a World's Finest team up, and maybe that'll get me back engaged with Supergirl, because if you guys thought I was off the train with Mr. Robot, you have no idea. I've not. I think I watched the first 3 episodes of Supergirl, haven't watched it since.
Yeah, I'm off it too right now. So I'll get back on it right before Crisis, just so I can see what threads are relevant to that crossover event. But yeah, Ben, it's something I had to give on the rotation, and that was the one.
So here's a question for you.
Yeah.
In past seasons, we've always had these crossovers. and the hype is there.
Mhm.
However, those seasons never felt as if they were building to this major crossover event. We knew it was coming as a viewer, but it didn't feel like the story threads that were really, especially with Flash, especially with Arrow right now. It's all anchored on Crisis. And we've covered this in the past. Sometimes when you go into something with high expectations, you're only going to ever be disappointed. Do you think this is a smart thing for the writers to be doing?
Arrow, at least, I feel between Flash and Arrow, I feel that at least Arrow seems to be at least trying to tell some interesting stories, and yes, Crisis is obviously hanging over things, but I enjoyed Arrow this week. I thought that it was just it was good to see the Bravta. It was seeing what's been enjoyable about Arrow this season has now that Mia and William have come back in time to be alongside Oliver. It's been fun just seeing that relationship, and it was like a lot of nice nostalgia moments with the with the training with the tennis balls and those kind of things. So Arrow to me is still very engaging because of that. And even though Crisis is hanging over it, and all the stories that are leading to Crisis, but it doesn't feel that it doesn't feel as much of filler as the Flash has been feeling the last 2 weeks. Because I think the last 2 Flash episodes, the Cisco one, I liked. I really enjoyed that episode. I didn't feel like it was filler. This week, my takeaway is filler. The Flash filler. Yeah. And I've seen. I mean, if you want to see a good James Bond take riff episode, go watch. There's an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Our Man Bashir. That's a very fun take on James Bond. It was hard. It was hard. I mean, at first I was trying to be charitable. It's like, oh, okay, yes, I like parts of it, but I was talking to our guest one time we've had on here, Polly, a couple times, and she was like, I hated the episode, and I was like, I watched a little bit of it Tuesday night, and I was like, it's not too bad. But now, having gotten through a little bit more of it, it was. Flash they have. Hopefully, the next couple episodes will better, because this week was definitely the low part so far of season 6, because it was 100% filler episode, and
they got to get through Crisis.
Yeah,
I mean,
thing is,
with the Flash, and I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. Yeah. We all know he's not going to die.
Exactly,
and that's what's driving me crazy. Yeah, because I feel like every episode is about him getting a team member to accept the fact that he's not going to be around after Crisis. Right. And I, as a viewer and an intelligent person, am like, we know he's going to survive, so why do we care about any of this?
Yeah.
And it's driving me crazy, and I agree. Arrow, I was worried there for a little bit. I was like, man, why do we have to have the flash forwards? And do we really care anymore? Because this is about Oliver. This is his last 10 episodes of this show that he's built and his journey. So I think it was a smart move to bring in the kids, especially with Mia, because with Mia, he'll never meet, he'll never have the chance to watch her grow up. Right. But at least he's been able to see who she's become. My one quibble. William needs to stop doing an impression of Felicity.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, they certainly do their parallels between me and Oliver, but not to that eccentric, I'm so smart. I'm sorry, you're not Emily Bett.
Yeah,
Emily Beck can get away with that stuff. You can't. And I just, the writers aren't doing him any favors either. And it also kind of bothers me, like, in a weird way, because I'm like, they're not even genetically related.
right,
And
right.
he spent barely any time with her. So why is he acting like that's his real? It just, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And it stands out anytime I watch the episode. I immediately just want to mute William.
Well, I think, I mean, yeah, I mean, I get this, what you're saying, and I feel sometimes the same too, that he's trying to channel Felicity there. Sometimes it works, more times it doesn't. But they did have, I mean, when you think back to, I guess, seasons 6 and 7, I mean, he and Felicity, before he got sent off to to the grandparents, they did spend a lot of time together, and she did have a lot of opportunity to sort of mold him and formulate him, and get him on the track, this particular track that he becomes a computer genius, and genius like she was. So it works okay for me, overall.
I agree. He can be a genius. We knew the kid was smart when he was 11 on the show. He does not have to. It feels like a bad imitation.
Mm.
And it's just, and I know it's not really the actor's fault. It's mainly the writers who are just feeding him that garbage. But it just, that's the one thing that keeps taking me out of these episodes. I was really worried going into the season that because it all hinges on Crisis, that I would be getting annoyed, but I'm not. They really are utilizing that arc to their advantage in finishing Oliver's story. And meanwhile, they're just killing Barry Allen's story. Just running it into the ground.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, yeah, the whole finding the replacement leader, that kind of stuff. Yeah, they need to. Hopefully, these next few episodes leading into Crisis we will get off of that track and get really get back to the Bloodworks story, because I mean, Bloodwork has been a pretty interesting villain this season so far, and I like what that the actor has brought to the character, which was solely lacking last season with Chris Klein as Cicada. So I mean, Paper Bag will look better. Yeah. So there are some points that that has worked. But overall, the things that always drag the Flash down is just trying to do too much with all the supporting characters. It's starting to creep in again.
Yep. Because this is our last episode, we're going to take a break next week, everyone. Enjoy some turkey. Maybe my world will get back on normal access, maybe. But Will, before we go and sign off for the night, any update on Black Lightning?
Yeah, quick update on Black Lightning. We saw the fallout from Davon's death. Jefferson was obviously feeling very responsible, and then also Thunder was poisoned by a painkiller, and so she, filmed the video just in the event that she was going to pass away. But the two things that stand out for me in the episode was Lynn and Tobias Tobias basically still manipulating Lynn, and her addiction to the green light that Agent Odell had started early on in the season. This came to a head where she actually left Jefferson, and is going to go back to the lab 100% of the time now. So, and then Agent Odell maybe saying bye-bye. The Markovians came in to town, and firefight ensued, and he was wounded. I don't know if it was mortally or not. So we shall see. But
we shall see. And let's be honest, Lynn did not only leave Jefferson for Greenlight, but also Gamby.
Yeah,
and my fan fiction can continue.
can
All
continue.
right.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I do like about what they've been doing with Black Lightning, just like they have been with Batwoman, is still continuing on a story without Crisis being, uh, overshadowing what's going on in the main events for those shows this season. And
Right.
speaking of Crisis, we got some news that Stargirl is going to show an appearance in Crisis as a way to introduce her for the new series that's going to be on the DC app later at some point in 2020. But the other news with that is the show is going to also be on the CW. So we'll see that. And so Crisis, they continue to drop little nuggets as we get closer to the event. Who knows? Hopefully they'll start slowing down, because hopefully I'm sure they will. I know we'll be surprised about some things, but that's some other things that happened this week, other than the photos we saw in Entertainment Weekly with like Tom Welling and Kingdom Come Superman and Batman and whatnot. So, but yeah.
And on that note, I'm going to call it a night, because all information I do not want to know about, because I just want Crisis to be here so we can get through it and move past it. So I'm going to sign off. Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me and send me a baby Yoda toy, since they're coming out this week, at Will M Polk. That's WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, but most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.